Presentation. I've tried to cover a lot of space. It's when you come to a great conference like this, you have parents who have been here multiple times and whose child was diagnosed, several years ago, versus parents whose children are newly diagnosed. And so I'm trying to, swing between the experiences of the new diagnosis and those who have kind of been on this train for a much longer period of time. So I do want to take a look at the impact of a child's living with chronic illness, the impact on family, the impact on siblings, the impact on a marriage, and how to take good care of your marriage, and what it means to kind of nurture a bounce-back child. So the goals are looking at the challenges, identifying interventions that promote a healthy family, healthy marriage, and resiliency in this child, and to just take a quick look at resources that can assist families in coping with a child with chronic illness. This quote pretty much says it for me. I mean, a family is a system. It's not an island. The individuals in this system are not little robots, not off to themselves. And we're talking about the impact of an illness on multiple people that make up this family system. And it's coming to terms with a lot of different things that are impacting the child, siblings, you, your spouse, and working to remain a family. I often get asked about divorce rate with families who have children who are ill. There have been a lot of papers done on that, taking a look at what that might mean. And interestingly enough, there really hasn't been any conclusive write-ups about whether or not this is a great predictor or not. If you look at just a large picture, because when you're talking about illnesses, you can be talking about chronic illnesses versus a life-threatening illness versus maybe just an acute trauma that's taken a child a long time to recover from. But most of the papers do not show a huge difference in compared to the general population. However, I will say that there are some factors such as the severity of a child's illness and the severity of how that has impacted them, how debilitating it is with the child, that do show a slight increase in divorces in families that do have a child with a severe debilitating illness. That is one thing that is a little bit different there. But resiliency is truly the name of the game, and how adaptive a family can be in making sure they can stay together as a family as they face a pretty difficult challenge. So there are a lot of families in similar situations as you all, and these are some of the things that they say that they face. And they are stepping back and just kind of, I find families at the early part of a child's diagnosis, or sometimes if a child has been in remission for a while and then has a really big flare, some of these things kind of come flooding back. And that's not uncommon. So we're looking at, from the very beginning, kind of a loss of control. The way that you had things planned, the way things were going in your family to begin with, that's kind of taken a shift here, as it may. And it's easy to feel like I am overwhelmed and out of control and I'm not sure what to do. That can naturally, of course, produce a lot of anxiety. There's worry about your child's future. There's worry and good questions about the medications. What is that going to mean? What does that mean for their future even? There can be anger and resentment. You know, why my child? You know, why right now when we're, already struggling with some things? These are all very common experiences that families in your situation face. There's certainly sadness. Once again, I think that goes along with just the concern of, wow, what is this going to mean for my child and for their future? Or what is this going to, how is this going to impact my other children? That's a pretty common, thread as well. I have had some families, especially children who were first diagnosed and didn't come to us early on, who felt a lot of guilt because they went and sought out alternative treatment, or they were doing the right thing. They were going to their pediatrician, and we're talking about, well, maybe this is growing pains, this is that. And then by the time they come to us, their disease activity is pretty high. And I see parents who are really lamenting and second-guessing themselves. And I really try and say to them, okay, let's step back a little bit from that, and let's try not to, beat yourself with a stick too much. You were looking out for the best interest of your child. You were following what everybody, suggested that you do. So let's kind of take a break from that. And you're here now, and this is your new starting point. And that's what's really most important. Certainly there are a lot of financial concerns, extra co-pays for medicines, extra visits to clinics, travel back and forth. It can become quite a financial burden. And that is something that I think is common, and families really have to kind of sit down and figure out, okay, how are we, what are we going to do with this? But then at the very end, you're managing all of the above. How are we going to manage this? How do we manage getting him or her back to their appointments, getting our other kids who are involved in other things to go to other places? What do we cut back with on our budget? How are we going to, sort through all this? So these things are really very common challenges that everybody is, sitting down and trying to figure out, gosh, what are we going to do now? The key, I think, to beginning to make sense out of all of this is really working towards what I would call an acceptance of the reality of the illness. And I think the need, to begin to see that we're leading a different kind of life, but we can really adapt. Your life situation may have changed, but the values and the beliefs that you hold as a family have not. And I think that's really an important key when you're stepping back and trying to figure out what is this going to mean and how do we make sense out of all this. I always thought that this was kind of an interesting quote, because I think it's true. You didn't ask for this, but now we're jumping on board with this, what Allison's mom calls a train. And we're on this ride, and we're going to see, where it takes us, and we're just going to sort it out as we go. So I want to take a look at some strategies. I just call this a family maintenance plan, because I think that's what it is. It's a way to kind of step back and have a really broad view of your family and what your family kind of needs in order to make sure that you stay resilient and keep focus on your family as it develops, as all your children develop. So these are coping strategies to kind of increase your support for your entire family. The first thing certainly is education. Become very educated about your child's illness. Talk with providers. learn what you can learn, read about it, read about medicines, read about side effects. Just take a new course. This is like, rheumatology 101, but really invest in understanding. You've got a new language that you're learning, you're meeting new people, you're trying to develop, relationships with all these professionals. Educating yourself is just really going to be a very important thing for you to do. The second thing is communication. And you're a partner, as far as we're concerned in our practice, you're a partner in the treatment of your child. We don't look for parents just to be spectators. That doesn't mean that we expect you to know everything either. But everyone brings something to the table. This is your child. You know how this little person, operates. We need to know that. We need to share with you everything, all of, our knowledge on what it means to treat your child. And not just to treat your child as a physical specimen. I mean to really look at your child from an emotional standpoint, a social standpoint, and a physical standpoint. That is an important way for us to holistically treat your child. So communication is really important. Communication in your family is really important. With your other children, to help them kind of know what's going on. Certainly that needs to be developmentally appropriate, but to help everyone kind of have an idea of what is going on, and even to ask, what do they think about what's going on? That's really important to sort out, and what other children are thinking, or what your child who has JIA is thinking. What do they understand? Because when you're assessing that, that gives you immediate access to correct any kind of things that they may really have a misunderstanding or misconception about. So that's really important. Social support is tremendous. I think it's really important for families when you need to not be afraid to reach out to other people. We are social creatures, and I think it's really great when you can help family and friends understand, what's going on with your child, and when you might need a little extra from them, particularly, let's say, if a child is having a bad flare and you're running back and forth to the clinic or you're in the hospital. There are many, there are errands to be run and other children to pick up and baseball practices for somebody else, and if you can help relieve some of the, anxiety that you're feeling by having that good, support network, that's great. And the time to do that is not when you're in the middle of the fire, in the middle of the crisis, but to have those things, already in place. Perception, that between communication and perception, I see those as just two huge keys for successful, adaptation of a family. The perception is, how do we see and make sense of what's going on around us now that our child, has been diagnosed? How you view this, what meaning you give to this, is going to be extremely important to this child that's been diagnosed and to your other children. How you continue to focus on, I think, the strengths of that child, the strengths of your family, versus total focus on, this illness and making it the center of your family system is extremely important. I also want to say that perception carries on too, over to schools. How do you educate and communicate with school systems is really, really important. Oftentimes I see that our families, I'll sit down with them and we'll do a little coaching session. We'll do a little coaching session on, of course, understanding 504 plans, but also on making sure that that school understands the potential of your child. I unfortunately have witnessed too many times when school systems do not see that potential. One, they're like, what do you mean arthritis? Isn't that for old people? Two, oh, well, okay, all right, if the child's in pain, then we'll just call the parents. And I'm like, what? And so I kind of work with them to kind of see, well, what do you think that does to this child every time you do this? You know, and so I think it's really important for parents to be really proactive with school systems and say, yep, this is what, is going on with him or her. This is what we need to, for accommodations to keep the playing field level for my child in the school. This is their potential and these are their strengths. And I think you have to really advocate for your child with the school system. I think that's really important. The next thing is routine, but yet remain flexible. Everyone knows that routine and structure is really important to kids. It helps them feel safe. It helps them kind of know what to expect, things that are coming. It's just a very natural thing that we do. Now, that continues to be really important in your family. However, you also have to be flexible because there may be times when you go for an appointment and the next thing you know, you're there extra because you have to have MRIs and more blood work, and we've got to wait for these, and we don't want you to leave until we get these results back so we can talk to you about them. And I see some smiles, so I know that that you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so that's happening, but that other child back home may have a baseball game, and you were going to go to it, and no, I'm not. What's that going to mean? This is where I think communicating to your other children that, there are going to be times when things might come up, and I may not be there, but your daddy's going to be there, or your mom's going to be there, and grandpa, grandma, and we're going to be flexible. We're just going to go like this. And that's what resiliency, I think, is really all about. It's about being flexible and adapting to what life is kind of thrown to you. Another thing I've had many parents tell me that organization really helped them, particularly when their child was first diagnosed. You come in, like I said earlier, you're learning a new language, you're meeting new people, you've got all these things coming your way. You have 18 papers that you put in an envelope that you stuff in the bottom of a really big purse or somewhere in the drawer at home, and then you're like, what do I do with that? Shoot, I don't remember that phone number, and so you're rummaging around trying to find out where that is. Organization also, I think, gives you a better sense of control. You can't control that you're on this train you're already on, and that's just how it is. But you can, begin to help make things make sense to you. And organization is really good. In North Carolina, we have the North Carolina ECAC, which is an Exceptional Children's Assistance Center, and you will find those all over the country. I think in Virginia they're called the TAC. And the one in North Carolina, which you can go online if you would like, has a really nice health notebook that you can download. And you can begin to put down what is the pertinent information in notebook form and, have that at your fingertips. I think it's also a nice thing to have, families move, we're moving back and forth here and there, and you can have this notebook, and if you are moving, then you will be able to have a portable health record to take with you. Yes, please. Yeah, it's the North Carolina ECAC. It's the Exceptional Children's Assistance Center. Yeah, and it's really, and you look under, I think it's either under your child's health or health, and then you can see health notebook download. I mean, it's like 32 pages long. That's okay. If you come to my other presentation, I can tell you. So we have like 50,000 resources. But if you just Google North Carolina ECAC, it's going to pop up, and you'll be able to get it. And it's really nice. And organization, if your child, it just helps to have things at your fingertips prior to any kind of crisis. And that's the thing about, resiliency and adaptation. When a you know, a chronic illness, this does not have to mean that you have to operate in crisis mode all the time. You know, you do not. You know, you do not. And these kinds of strategies can help avoid that and avoid that extra stress, you know, within the challenge that you're already facing. R&R, it is so important for families to have fun, to get out, to, you know, do fun things. And the reason, you know, I think that is really important is because, once again, you know, we do not particularly want to see the focus in the family be on this child's illness. We need to take that into consideration with what we're doing, but it does not mean that everything revolves around that. I want to begin to talk a little bit about self-care and marriage. I have often had many moms, and I talk a lot about mothers because, you know, women generally are in our society the primary caregivers. And I think this is really a very poignant statement. This is not what this mom wanted to be. She didn't want to be a poor role model to her child. She was tried to be super mom. You know, she tried to be everything, you know, for that child, and really depleted, you know, her own resources. You know, her cup was so empty that, you know, she was just a shell of herself after everything was kind of, you know, calmed a little bit with respect to the disease. But that is not what, you know, she really wanted to be. And I say that, you know, leading into what I want to talk about marriage. You know, marriage, in my opinion, is, you know, marriage sets the tone for the health of a family. And it's really important, I feel, for parents to take care of themselves, take care of their marriage when they are, you know, looking at what it means to have a child with a chronic illness, and what does that mean to your marriage. You know, it's really important that you all, now if you're not married, if you just have, you know, a partner or whoever your significant other is that's involved in this and on this train with you, that's, you know, who I'm talking about. I want to start talking first about gender differences in communication. And the reason I bring this up is just because a couple of things. One, I think, yes, our society and our culture, you know, helps, you know, groom us into the roles that we assume. But I also believe that biologically, you know, we are different, you know, and we, you know, we're wired different as men and women. You know, my 8-year-old godson, you know, he can run like the wind. He can't run like the wind right now, and all these little girls zip past him because they're faster. But what I know that he's not so sure about right now is that by the time he's 13, he's going to leave them in the dust. He will become physically different. You know, he will be, you know, in the lead because he's going to be stronger and faster. You know, I believe that those differences also translate to just how we're wired as men and women. So I want to talk about how, you know, how we view things during stressful times and how we communicate. And the reason I want to do that is there was a family once whose child was quite ill, and in the end, you know, they ended up getting a divorce. And the one thing that the mom said after this was the fact that she didn't understand, you know, some of her husband's behavior. She didn't understand some of the ways that he thought about things. And so that's why I really wanted to talk about gender relationships. I'm going to start with women first. You know, women generally, if you watch little girls, you know, women cultivate relationships. It's really important to them to kind of, when they're little girls, to bring everyone into the fold. They, you know, they want to work to resolve, you know, whatever the conflict is, to, you know, mutual resolution. Let's sit down and figure this out, you know. Oh, Tammy, we don't want you to be upset. I mean, they just really we network a lot. You know, we start doing that when we're really young. And we're also very detailed. We seem to kind of hone in on the details in the midst of, you know, crises and things like that. And, you know, that's just kind of how we are. We also, as you saw with Allison's mom, we are super reluctant to take care of ourselves. We just really have struggled with that. You know, we're nurturers, we're caregivers, but we forget sometimes to care for ourselves. And I will say that, I mean, because of the fact that we cultivate relationships and we do use a lot of language, that we often will reach out. We'll reach out to our best friend, we'll blow off steam, you know, we might, you know, just be the blow off steam about what we don't understand about husbands and this, that, and the other. So we are, you know, relationship focused, and we will, you know, go out to our friends when, you know, we really are feeling overwhelmed. So men, on the other hand, seem to have a less emphasis on relationships. Now, I should have said at the very beginning that these tendencies are not in stone. I don't want anyone to think that, you know, I think that everybody's going to, you know, end up like this. But I think, you know, that this kind of does represent how we think as different genders. So men seem to put less emphasis on relationships. It's more on results and move on. If you think about, looking at little boys playing a baseball game or any kind of thing like that. Let's say there's a hit, Tommy slides into first base, he thinks he's safe, first base says he's out, second base is like, no, you're not, and they just go back, they have all this, you know, chat, back and forth. And finally, in the end, someone goes, yes, you were. You know you were out. You know, just stop because I want to play. And everyone goes, oh, okay. And they go back to playing. They just go back to doing what they were doing. You know, they're done. And that, you know, they come to this conclusion. They married it back and forth. This was the result. Now we're going to go back to playing. You know, I also think that men provide a lot of information about doing things. You know, if you do this first and that first. Just think about a lawn. If you move into, you know, new house and that back lawn just looks terrible, and you want that lawn to be nice and green, well, here's what's going to happen. You know, you're going to tear up that lawn. You're going to go to Lowe's and Home Depot. You're going to either buy turf or let's just say you buy grass seed. You're going to buy stuff to amend that soil. You're going to plant that grass seed. You're going to put straw on top of it. You're going to water it just like it is your baby. And in the end, you're going to have this nice lawn. It's what you do. You just, you know, you plan for results and how to get to them. You fix it. And as a friend of mine says about her husband, and if all else fails, you read the manual. You know? And that's just how guys think. And another thing that I think is really important, and this is what the lady, the family, the couple that got divorced, she didn't understand that during the real difficult and crisis times, men don't always reach out, you know. And her husband was one of those men. He was more, he took solace. You know, he had to just internally begin to try and sort things through for him. And that was what she didn't understand. She thought that he, you know, was backing away from her because he didn't want to be involved in this anymore. Which that was really, you know, not the case. But unfortunately, you know, things had drawn apart a lot. And it did not end up happily as everyone had hoped. But so, you know, men do seek self-solace. You know, they're less likely to, you know, reach out when things are particularly difficult. So we looked at these differences. So what do we do to try and make a connection between these groups that kind of think and act a little bit differently? I love the fact that God did give us 2 ears and 1 mouth, that we should listen twice as much as we speak. I think that is a really important proverb to learn. first thing I like to talk about in kind of making that connection in your marriage is to talk to each other. It's important to kind of debrief, to kind of, you know, get things out there if you're concerned about something that's going on in your family, if you're concerned about treatment for your child. I think it's just important to kind of begin to talk these things out and, you know, get things out on the table. In doing that, you have to listen. And listening to your partner is not, while they're talking, you thinking what you're going to say back. That's not listening. That is not what listening is about. Listening is about being attentive to what your partner is saying. It's like having an empty mind. You know, your whole focus is on what they are saying. You know, you're doing that in order to understand where they're coming from. I think too it's important to respect differences, respect your partner's differences. If you all are, you know, trying to sort out a treatment change or anything else that's going on, you know, a disagreement in your family, you know, it's important to respect the perspective of the other person. Because quite frankly, you know, differences help us come, I think, to a better resolution when we're able to see where each other is coming from. I think we can come to a better resolution in whatever the disagreement is on solving the problem. The understanding, like I said a moment ago, goes back to the listening, because you want to understand the perspective that, you know, your spouse or your partner is coming from. It's really important, I think, particularly in disagreements, to really listen and to try and understand that, because we all bring, not only gender difference, but we all bring our values that we were raised with. So when we come into disagreements, I think it's important for the other person who's listening to think about what's behind, why is my spouse feeling this way? What's behind this? You know, what was going on? What's going on with them that they would have this perspective? Once again, I think it helps us suspend judgment on whatever it is they're saying until we kind of have a better idea, you know, as to where they're coming from. And then, you know, it also helps us focus on the problem, not the fact that he's driving you crazy. You know, that's not going to help you resolve the problem. But focus on what the problem is, you know, not the person. We're not, you know, going to, you know, attacking the person or how they're presenting themselves. We're looking at focusing on the problem, trying to come to a mutual decision, you know, a mutual resolution. And the last thing I wanted to look at is practicing forgiveness. Everyone has flaws, and things can get really tough and tense, particularly if I think your child is really having a hard time. You know, the anxiety level reaches up a little bit, and, you know, it makes it a little more difficult for us to try and, you know, keep our calm factor, you know, going. And you do not want to, you know, enter into a bitter party of one kind of, you know, way of life. I think that will have a tendency to ruin you, and I think it will also have a large negative impact on your family. So I think it's important, you know, to learn to forgive. Other things I want to talk about with respect to marriage and caring for marriage is becoming aware of over-identifying roles. As I mentioned earlier, it's pretty common for, you know, I see a good number of moms. You know, moms are caregivers. Moms, you know, take kids to appointments, take care of medicines, et cetera, et cetera. I think that what I have seen happen in several families that I can think of is you need to be careful that when mom gets back, that there's not necessarily a whole lot of second guessing and, you know, critique of what happened. You know, I had, you know, moms come to the clinic and we're going to change treatment of a child, she's very distressed. She's very distressed because her husband said, well, why didn't you ask this? Well, why didn't you ask that? And what does that mean? And why does this have to happen? And pretty soon, you know, she began to feel that, well, I don't know, and then she began to second guess herself. So what we try to do is, you know, invite this dad to, you know, come to these appointments so we can meet you, so we can go over this with you, so we can try and address these questions, because we want you all to be partners in this. Another example, child comes, we're changing treatment, we're going to go to injections. The next day, mom is on the phone saying to me, oh my Lord, we can't do this. My husband is absolutely adamantly against this. I don't know what to do. He won't listen to me, etc., etc. I said, okay, let's come in, you know, bring Dad in. We'll sit down and try and find out if we can answer his questions. And because I'm like, you know, he might have some really good questions that you know, we just need to reassure him. So he comes in, and lo and behold, it wasn't about the fact that we were necessarily going to a new medicine. It had to do with the fact that he's needle phobic. And he was having difficulty separating what scared him to what we needed to do for his daughter. And she became more anxious. This is a child who had not had any problems with her labs. And she became much more, and it was like, heck no, I'm not having no shots, you know. And she began to play off of his fears because she was really scared because her dad was really scared. And so, you know, it's just really important. If you can go together sometimes, and you know, it's really kind of nice to switch up too. I think it's kind of nice when dads can come to some appointments. We have kids, when dads come to appointments, they want to introduce their kid to the nursing assistants, to the people out front. This is my dad, he came to me today. And it really gives a different perspective, you know, on things. And it's really quite nice. So I would, you know, ask you all, don't do that, to consider doing it. Together time is really, really important. It's important for you all to nurture, you know, your marriage, to get away. This could be a short walk. This could be, you know, overnight. This could be, you know, sending little notes in lunch bags. This is where having your support system can come in really handy. If you all just want to, you know, it's time for you all to get alone and have some alone time, and all the people that you brought into your support system, this can be the time that they can step up and babysit or do it overnight. You know, before you were nursing assistant, before you were chauffeur, before you were chef, you were friends and lovers. And that's really important to remember that, I think. You know, to us, I said earlier, I really think that marriage is really, you know, the most important thing in a family system, and it dictates the health of the family. And make use of that support system, as I said, you know, use those people. You've trained them, you've taught them, you know, they know what to expect. Take advantage of it, you know, and take care of yourself. So I just, you know, kind of wanted to go over a little bit about what kids kind of have to say. You know, sometimes I know parents don't talk to their children because they're trying to protect them. And I, you know, respect that, because I think right at first when your child is diagnosed, I think you're protecting you, because you're not sure what this is going to mean, and you're not sure what it's going to mean, you know, for the future. But I would, you know, caution you, as you can see, these two kids, they really felt left out of the loop. They really didn't like the fact that no one knew how anyone felt about this illness and what was going on. You know, it really had a tremendous impact on them. This is something that I run across all the time, that a lot of our children see themselves being defined by their illness. That is just not the case. You know, they have JIA just like they wear glasses, just as if they have red hair, just as if they're stubborn as their grandpa, you know. It's just a piece of who they are. It doesn't define them as an individual. I had a 17-year-old that I saw in the clinic. He's a 17-year-old with spondyloarthritis. And I was just talking to him one day about, you know, well, what are you going to do, you know, next year? You're going to graduate. What are your plans? And he kind of looked at me and he said, well, everyone said I should apply for disability. And I was like, disability? And he goes, yeah. I said, well, why is that? And he looked at me and he goes, well, you know, I can't do all the lifting and stuff like my dad does at the factory. And, you know, my grandma said, you know, that I can't work over where my uncle works either. And I mean, it just went on and on. And I was like, well, is this what you wanted to do? And he goes, well, I don't know. He goes, I don't really know what I can do. And I was like, wow, okay. Because he, you know, in his circle, his circle in family, his circle in his own town, you know, really focused a lot on what he couldn't do. So we began to sit down and plan and take a look at assessing what he liked to do, what his skills, you know, strengths were. And he was very into this. And I suggested that he get linked up with folk rehab. I gave him the number. We practiced what to say to them when he called. And he was so excited when I saw him several months later because he got hooked up with VR. And they were working with him on doing some assessments of his skills. And he was looking forward to getting job training and working because he really loved computers and things like that. And he did. And he's now like 22 years old. And so it's just really important. And sometimes I will, you know, say things to our fellows and our physicians, you know, do not tell me that you have a spondy in the clinic. You have a child with spondyloarthritis. Be careful, you know, how we say things, I think really matters. And it matters too, I think, what our broader vision is of a child. Once again, I think that as you look over this, you can imagine the sibling rivalry that was going on, you know, here, and the resentment from the siblings. Now, do I think that these parents, you know, didn't want their child to learn anything, or I don't think that they meant to convey the message that their child was inept, or that their child was not a part of the family. But unfortunately, that was exactly what happened, because this child was no longer a part of the family system where everyone, you know, pulls together to do things for the greater good of the family. She was more of a spectator than anything else. You know, teenagers, they're something. We all know that the, you know, early teens and mid-teens in particular, and later, you know, teenagers are beginning to separate from us. They're, you know, that system changes a little bit. They're more into what their friends and peers think. You know, they want to take a little more, you know, care of themselves, etc. But, you know, for Kathleen, you know, this was kind of her mom's just, you know, trying to take care of her, but unwittingly making Kathleen feel, you know, pretty much like a small child and incapable of taking care of herself. So I just wanted to, you know, bring these up just to kind of help you see, you know, what kids often think. So what do we do with this child that has a chronic illness? How do we nurture them to really tap into their resiliency? Well, the first thing we do, once again, is listen and educate. From the time your child is small, I think it's really important to kind of get an idea from them about what they think about what's going on. Now, certainly when they're, you know, 5 and 6, you know, it's going to be like, I don't know, my knee hurts, and I go to see the doctor. We go and get medicines because, the doctor's trying to, help your knee feel better. Oh, okay. I think it's really important to tap into what they're thinking. Sometimes when we don't do that, we run the risk of situations that I have faced where I have young children who are very frightened at coming to the clinic. And they've been coming a lot because, when they're newly diagnosed, we've got to kind of beat back the activity of this disease. And so one day I asked them, why are you here? Well, I don't know. Well, have you been really sick? Well, yeah, I've been really sick, and I just don't like being here. Well, what are you most afraid of? Well, I don't know. Nobody talks to me. And do you think I'm dying? I will never forget the first time somebody said that to me. And I'm like, wow, let's just bring everybody in here and we're going to talk about this. So, bring your physicians in, bring your parents in. I said, we got a question here. Am I dying? And it's just important to really, kind of see, how your child is understanding and perceiving what's going on with them. Providing choices, is really important. It gives a child a sense of control. And that's why we work really hard in clinics to make sure that if there are lab draws, we say, do you want to sit on mom's lap, dad's lap? Do you want to hold your bear? Do you want to be in this chair, in that chair? Once again, we can't take away the fact that they have JIA, but we can give them a sense of control as to how their treatment goes. And that is really important for the psyche of a child. So we really, look to do that. Promoting responsibility is really important too. And once again, I go back to that slide about the, I couldn't do chores, I couldn't do anything. We're very adaptive people. We can think outside of the box. If a child's hands, and I just had this conversation with mom a couple of weeks ago, if your child is having a particular problem where they're really struggling with a lot of hand pain, and it's their turn to clear the table, well then, if we cannot safely pick up a bunch of plates and take them over, to the dishwasher, well then let's think of something else that I can do. I could, maybe take the silverware. And my sister, who's going to nag at me anyway, will just have to take the plates for the second time and live with it. But think outside of the box. If you can't do that, then maybe you can fold the clothes. Or could you feed the dog? It's a sense of telling this child and demonstrating to them, I know you can do this. We're going to practice problem solving. We're going to figure this out. And it's you working with them, because that when they're in school, they're going to face, a lot of situations to where they're going to have to kind of think, how can I do this? What do I need to do? Do I take the stairs today? No, I think I'm really going to take the elevator because my knee's really hurting. I might take one flight, but then I'm going to do something else. We want to promote that way of thinking in your child. How to adapt and figure out that if I can't do it this way, then I'm going to do it that way. It's just really important to develop that sense of independence in them. Promoting good job attendance, that means going to school. It's not just important to go to school because of the sequential learning that occurs. It's also important because of socialization. And once again, learning how to problem solve and practice that. I think it is perfectly fine to sit with your kids and kind of do little role plays. And I find this particularly helpful when a child is first diagnosed. Okay, what am I going to say? What am I going to say when these kids come up to me? And, kids sometimes can just be mean. And how are they going to handle that? I think you could help equip your kid into how to handle that by, making a little role play game. What am I going to, okay, what do you do? What if this happens? What if that happens? And I'm sure you wouldn't have trouble finding a sibling who could, play the, evil student role, And I think it's just really good. I think it's great to empower our children in that way. To socialize and remain active. I know that sometimes in my We don't want them to have to face all of these things that I just talked about. But you're not going to have a bubble child. They're going to face these situations, and to be proactive and to help them prepare is much better than them standing there and feeling like they got to make up something. Or as I just, a few weeks ago had a little girl who absolutely, positively had to have a Band-Aid, had to have a wrapping around her leg because all the kids at school were saying, "Oh, you're not sick. You don't look sick." She needed in her own mind that pink Band-Aid wrapped around her leg so she could validate the fact that yes, she wasn't feeling good because she didn't know what else to do. So we have to kind of think and prepare and anticipate those kinds of things. Being in camps, I am a big camp advocate. Oh my gosh, I love kids going to camp. We have Victory Junction Camp in North Carolina. Duke also has Camp K, Camp Kaleidoscope, which is our camp. These are all run by our physicians, and we also cooperate with Victory Junction. These are very safe. This is not, if you do send your child to a local camp, I think that's great too, but make sure that you prepare for that, just like you would prepare for them going to school, that everybody needs to know what the deal is with their medicine. If we don't want them on the trampoline, then, you need to talk to them that they can't be on the trampoline, but what are we going to have for a suitable, substitute there? So that's really important. I think it's just really great for kids to remain active and to continue, because this is their developmental path. We're not here to get them off that path. We're here to keep them on that path and to teach them how to do that and how to handle these situations. Attitude is what I'm talking about. It's an attitude of, okay, yeah, I got this, but all right, I'm going to do this a different kind of way. It's really instilling that, in your child. It's not to say that there aren't going to be some up and down times, particularly, when they are a teenager. But I think the more self-assured they feel, and the more they kind of have little outs to save face when they're young, really can pay off when they're teenagers. Wow, this is just really true. I love Carl. It's really true. We are adaptable creatures. We just have to, when our children are first diagnosed, work through the acceptance of that, knowing that we can figure out how to make it, that we are resilient, that you draw on the strengths that you have as a family, that you think about things that you've already been through in the past, and that you came through those, and you draw from those strengths before to get through the situation that you're in now. It is about resiliency. Resiliency, like transition, is a process, but you can get there. And I hope that through some of the strategies that I presented earlier, that this will help you as you are working to continue to strengthen your family. I'm just going to go briefly now through just a few little resources, things that you can look at. Websites are nice, message boards, books, newsletters. One thing to remember too when you're online is be aware of just craziness. If things really sound crazy, it's because they are crazy. If you want to talk about a treatment, talk to your attending, talk to the provider. It's important for us to know if you want to use supplements, if you want to use alternative things. I've never seen one of our attendings be against that. It's just we need to know so we can figure out what kind of interaction there might be with what your child's on now, and to say, okay, now let's give this a go. We talk about acupuncture a lot. We talk about yoga. I talk about yoga a lot because I think it's a really great way for kids to learn to relax. And so just be wise about things. I've loved this newsletter since it first came out. You're probably all very familiar with it. It's just really a great thing. Certainly, all the Arthritis Foundations have really nice things with groups and fun things for kids to do. And I know that that's different throughout the country as well, though. I know that some places are much larger, like chapters in California are certainly much larger than we are in North Carolina. But I would really look towards the foundation to see what kind of neat and fun things are going on, better ways to educate yourself, your child, your school system, just to have fun together, really get involved. If you have a late teen, I would say, I think this is a really nice website for late teens. I don't know that I would go any earlier than maybe 16 or 17, but it was put together by a young man when he was a sophomore in college. He was diagnosed with systemic arthritis when he was 15, I believe. And when he got to college, he was like, oh, I got all these questions. I need to seek other people out. So he created a website, put together a board. There are physicians on the board. It's pretty impressive. There are good pamphlets and things from the Arthritis Foundation. There's ones for your school, that kind of help educate teachers on school. These are two really good books. And as you saw, I took some excerpts from these books. They are books that not only interview children with JIA, but also interview children with diabetes, cystic fibrosis, asthma. It's just really good as they kind of look at how this impacts them and what does it mean to their families. This is a really nice book. Has a lot of practical tips in it. And if you don't have it, I certainly recommend it. These are nice things just for young children, particularly keeping a secret, because it's true, if you're trying to keep a secret about your illness, your stomach's really going to start bothering you. And it's just a nice little story, as is taking arthritis to school. One of the neatest things I've had with some of the older children that I've worked with is that when they get to high school, that some of them actually, they do have the confidence to say, you know what I'm doing for my biology project? I'm talking about systemic JRA. I'm showing people this. And then at the end, I'm going to tell them, that's me. I'm like, that's fantastic. You're going to educate all of these people. You're going to educate, everyone. Yes, ma'am.
Are these on the Arthritis website?
How did I get? I think I got Keeping a Secret off of Amazon.
So did I.
Yeah. Okay. And I can't remember where I got Taking Arthritis to School. I may have gotten that off of the Arthritis Foundation website. But I just thought that was just so cool, and he educated a lot of people.
That's our big problem. You guys money right now.
Yeah. And that's really, that comes and goes. I often see that with a lot of teenage girls. And, if they're middle school, then we're struggling with this, I don't really want to be different. The whole thing is we're all different. And so, I'm a neutral person, so when they come to see me, they don't have to worry about hurting my feelings or anything like that. They don't have to worry that if they say something to me that might hurt mom's feelings or upset daddy, or, I'm just a blank slate. And so, I have the nice ability to kind of challenge some of the things that they're saying. Because I'll start asking them, you have any friends with asthma? You have any friends with food allergies? Well, yeah. So you think different about them? No, they're my friends. Okay, then tell me why you should think different about you. And so we begin this dialogue, and that's what it is. It's an open dialogue to try and say, like I said, what is he really thinking? Does he really, is he scared that his friends will like him? Is he scared that somebody will make fun of him and he's not sure what to do? Is he just really just kind of going through the process of making peace with himself? And that will come as well. These are really nice websites that provide a lot of information. They also have, chat groups and things like that online. They're really quite nice. The Family Building has been around for a long time. It is a huge website. Oh my gosh, it's just huge. Band-Aids and Blackboard is a really nice place. If you have a child who wants to read stories from other kids, who would like to have their own story published, or they're going to publish, you know, they can go on to this and they will put it online, you know, under their poems and stories. It has sections for children, sections for teens, sections for parents and teachers. They also have some nice information to give teachers about really continuing to empower a child, not to peg them as one cannot do. So it's really nice. And the ECAC, as I mentioned, its org is really nice. And every state in the country has these. It's just you might have different regions. Like in Virginia, it's the PEATC, the Parent Education Assistance and Treatment Center, I think it is. So you'll have a location, you know, in Virginia, but they also might serve Maryland, you know, in West Virginia. So it just is set up just a little bit differently. But there's actually a national site that you can go to. I think you can find on Families to Families, or maybe back in the villages will have that information for you. I thank you very much for your attention. And do you all, we still have, yep, 10 minutes. Does anybody have any questions or anything, any strategies that you found that have been, you know, successful in answering questions of your children or school system here? Anything like
Like her son doesn't want anybody to know. It's fine. We also will do everything in power to leave. Don't say something about them. Very compensating. I don't push on. I don't think I push to kind of pull out of him what he's feeling. But it's really hard to do it in other, because I agree with what you said. We are just wired very differently. I do that. He doesn't. He can accept it. You know, what's your advice to parents and their parents have a young child with tendencies? You know, when you come to terms with yourself, it's so hard to be normal.
Well,
He is normal. I mean, normal, you know, he has no vehicle and running. You know, maybe he's not as fast as, maybe he can't fall out. And it just seems that you know, him, better about himself. He does anger. Maybe everyone has a lot of anger in him. But he won't. Well, you know what? He's not going to talk about it. I only talk about it.
well, you know, let's step back and just kind of take a look at, all right, so Kenny likes to be active, he wants to be involved in sports. You know, right now, you know, his running is a little bit compromised. Well, can we think of a reasonable not necessarily a substitute, because, you know, we may not want to pull him out of that because he's just going to get, you know, angrier, but maybe something else that we know that he might be able to excel in a little bit better. All right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm happy to talk with him. That's not a problem. I also, you know, encourage, you know, families, don't hesitate. If you see your child is really struggling, and if the anger is interfering, you know, with relationships, or you're concerned that it might get out of control a little bit later, don't hesitate to seek somebody out. You know, don't hesitate to find a neutral person for your, you know, child to see. There's many things that we can do in therapy. There are many great therapeutic games that we can play that, you know, touch on these sensitive topics that we bring out in a third-party form. Well, what would you tell Tommy if he didn't want to know, he didn't want to tell his coach that he had asthma? You know, I mean, we can do a lot of very non-threatening ways to begin to sort out what it is that's set. We can do that. And I think it's really important to try and address these things early on, because if we can begin to equip a child with effective coping skills, early on, then we know that these are going to be coping skills that they're going to use later. And that's how I particularly talk to our teenagers. If I think our teenagers are, if I have a teenager that's really anxious and depressed, then I will really recommend that they see someone, generally for cognitive behavioral therapy, because I know that if I do that, then I know that they are going to have all kinds of exercises where they're going to learn how to identify anxiety, and they're going to learn how to use some coping skills and how to deal with situations that are very distressing to them. And I tell them, it's not a matter of being crazy or not, because teenagers are really concerned that they think that they're crazy. And I often tell them that I know crazy because I, worked at an institution before, and try and assure them, using humor, that does not, they do not fit the bill. And I really sit down and kind of say, okay, if you have a way that you can learn how to effectively deal with situations that you're going to deal with in college or in relationships, would you not try and learn that now so you can be prepared for it later? Well, yeah, I guess I would. Well, okay, that's what it means to go and see somebody like me. And they're like, well, okay, I guess I could do that. And so that's what I'm just looking for, that door, to kind of, tap into. I also think too, you have to take into consideration if your child has any kind of learning difference or perception problem, then you have to take that into consideration too, because then we have to kind of make sure that that child is incorporating the right information that we want them, to hear, and not misunderstanding that or only getting bits and pieces of it. That's another thing that you have to think about too. And so I would encourage you to do that, and doing some really nice things and helping him stay involved and feel successful. But I'd like to know what he feels that he can't do. Or what does this mean to him?
Exactly.
What does it mean? What does it mean?
Yeah. Well, I think when he's 11 or 12, he's trying to pick. What am I going to do?
He's a stubborn boy, that's true.
He's stubborn.
Yeah.
Before we knew about the arthritis, we had taken him to a counselor because he had such high anxiety about, he was in sports, but mom or dad had to be at that game. The other trainers started to drop their kids off and then come back, but Colton would not let us leave. And even if grandma wasn't there. And what really hit home was when he did his basketball game and knew I had to leave. He broke down in the band and just said, so that it's all done over. Yeah. And so I called a counselor and said, it's not my son. And then he talked